Alberta Primetime with Michael Higgins.
Welcome to Alberta Primetime. Ahead tonight, the Mayor of Grande Prairie on access to health care and the training of medical students locally. But first, from follow to the situation in Venezuela to the resignation of a UCP cabinet minister. Let's kick off the program with tonight's politics panel. And joining us this evening, former MLA Karen McPherson, and Graham Thompson is a longtime political columnist in the province. Good evening to you both. And let's begin with building reaction to the American capture of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. Here's what the Prime Minister was saying today while in Paris.
We welcome the prospect of peace, a peaceful transition, democratic Venezuela. We welcome the prospect of greater prosperity in Venezuela, but we also see the competitiveness of Canadian oil, and we're investing, or we're putting in place measures so that that's going to happen.
Now, the Trump administration sent political shockwaves around the world with the weekend military raid saying the U.S. aimed to seize the country's oil reserves for American companies to exploit. In his statement, Premier Smith saying the situation emphasizes the importance of expediting the development of pipelines to diversify our oil export markets, and that the province is working to submit an application to the major projects office. Karen, let's start on the raid itself, the capture of Venezuela's president. What do you feel the world should take away from the actions of the Trump administration?
I think we can take Trump at his word when he's, made some imperialist overtures to other countries, both in South America and concerningly towards Greenland, saying that you're going to take over a NATO member is really concerning for the NATO alliance and the future of the alliance. Many leaders are coming forward. Canada has announced that they're establishing a consular office there in Greenland. So, leaders around the world are demonstrating that they're not in favor of the U.S. simply taking Greenland or any other country. And while many people in Venezuela are very relieved about Maduro being removed, we haven't had a regime change. It's simply the leader that's changed, and through what is essentially an illegal process. It wasn't approved by Congress. It isn't in alignment with international laws. So the outcome might be kind of okay, but the method is quite concerning. And is this how the United States means to operate going forward? I think that's a concern for Canada, especially.
Graham, what's to be made of how the rest of the world is responding, including our own national leadership?
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of the countries, Western countries, including Canada, of course, are being really careful how they talk about this. Saying it's good to bring some law and order to Venezuela and Maduro. No one's really shedding a tear over him being removed from power. But the allies are being really careful about not slamming Donald Trump for what, basically, and Karen's right, it was an illegal move. This is not backed by international law. In fact, it's against international law. But I think there's also this sort of fear as to what will Donald Trump do next. This is a major problem. Karen mentioned Greenland. It's also Canada. He's been talking about Canada becoming the 51st state, and Greenland. He wants to take over Greenland next, and Cuba might be in his gun sights. The thing is, when he does this, a lot of the allies are sort of saying, being really careful with this, very tepid response in many ways. This will, I think, only embolden Trump to do more. It's a huge question mark now about what are his next steps, not just about Venezuela, but other countries that he might be looking at taking over in some form, one way or the other, including Greenland.
Karen, where do you feel this will leave the urgency of conversations around the building of new pipelines to diversify the market for Alberta oil?
Both the Prime Minister and the Premier have said quite clearly that it remains a priority. Reinvigorating the energy infrastructure in Venezuela will take, a good decade. It's going to rely on a lot of investment, and investment usually goes where things are stable. So maintaining or creating stability within Venezuela to attract the investment, that's when Venezuela becomes more of a competitor to the oil that Canada and Alberta specifically exports. So there is time. But we don't want to lose the urgency. We don't want to lose the sense of urgency in completing a pipeline to the West Coast and creating more markets for our oil.
To that point, Graham, there's been mixed response to the impact of the Americans controlling the flow of Venezuelan oil and what that could mean for Alberta crude sales down the road. But how likely is this to potentially be welcome news for the Smith government in the near term, especially where that support for a new pipeline is concerned?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a major issue in Venezuela. But when it comes to a pipeline, Alberta wants a new pipeline, at least the government does, wants a new pipeline to the West Coast, and they got the MOU with the federal government. But in many ways, this hasn't changed anything. Those who are in favor of a pipeline, namely the Premier and her supporters, are saying, look, Venezuela could be flooding the market really soon. We've got to build that pipeline as soon as possible. But as Karen points out, it could take a decade to get the Venezuelan infrastructure up and running at a major scale. And then those who are against the pipeline are pointing that out, saying, hey, listen, there's no need to panic because it could take a decade. And the thing is, what's going to happen with the demand for oil in a decade? Do we really need another pipeline? So you got these issues going on. And the key here is the private sector. Who's going to build that pipeline to the West Coast here? Who's going to spend billions of dollars and years in Venezuela to get their economy up and running and get their own economy, the energy economy up and running? So there's a lot of questions right now, and it comes down to who's going to be putting a lot of billions of dollars, then quickly tied into Alberta's plan for a pipeline to the West Coast. It's tied in with the notion to get the Pathways Alliance carbon capture program underway, and that's a $16.5 billion plan to take emissions from the oil sands and pump them underground. $16.5 billion. The companies want government help. So to get a pipeline to the West Coast means getting the Pathways Alliance built and vice versa. The two are connected. So there's not just a case of, hey, Venezuela's been invaded, let's turn on the tap and get a new pipeline built. There's so many moving parts, and a lot of it relies on who is going to pay the cost of getting a new pipeline to the West Coast.
Yeah, lots of variables up in the air. Okay, time for us to take a bit of a break. But when we come back, getting a read on the surprise resignation of Alberta's Environment Minister. More from our panel in a moment. Welcome back. 2025 closed with a surprise resignation from the Smith cabinet.
Rebecca has served her province as a cabinet minister for over 6 years with distinction in a number of extremely challenging files.
The Premier responding to the New Year's Eve announcement by former Environment Minister Rebecca Schultz that she was leaving cabinet immediately and caucus in May. Grant Hunter has since been sworn in as Environment Minister. Graham, Rebecca Schultz did post a statement to social media announcing the resignation, but beyond saying that timing is everything in life and politics and that it's time to seek new career opportunities, she did not expound on specifics of the decision why. What do you see Albertans reading into that?
Yeah, this is a problem. Whenever, especially a minister, steps down from cabinet all of a sudden, and doesn't really explain other than, the timing. The timing is important, and she has other things on the horizon to do. And, of course, people think, okay, timing, does that mean there's an election coming? And that is something that's been talked about. I wrote a column just a few weeks ago, appeared in Alberta Views magazine, on the possibility of an early election. Smith is saying, no, it's not going to happen. But, boy, when you have a cabinet minister suddenly step down and not say it's for family reasons, whatever, it's very vague. Right now, you have a vacuum of information, and nature abhors a vacuum. So do pundits and journalists and other politicians. So they're all reading a lot into this, saying, "Why is she doing this? Does this mean something is happening inside the Smith government? Can we expect an early election?" I don't see that, but at the same time, without information, we'll start filling it with ideas and suggestions and maybe even some conspiracies.
Karen, Rebecca Schultz, among the candidates who ran for leadership of the UCP after Jason Kenney stepped down, what does her resignation say to you, especially as a former MLA?
Well, it's quite a surprise to see somebody go from running for the leadership of a party, then serving as a minister, to stepping down from cabinet and saying she's going to resign her seat. That's quite a departure within a fairly short amount of time. Although what has been said both by the minister or the former minister and the premier has been very complimentary. They've both said very nice things about each other. In terms of timing, I mean, who knows? It is purely speculative. What's happening in May? Is there somebody lined up for that seat in May? There's really so little information to go on. It's really hard to understand the motivation behind it. Ms. Schultz is a very experienced politico. She did work on campaigns. She worked as political staff before running for election. So she understands the implications. I think this was very calculated on her part. And it could be something that's deeply personal that we don't have any insight to. I think we need to keep that in mind as well.
So, Graham, where do you feel this development leaves Danielle Smith? And should there be an expectation of maybe others in the UCP caucus following in Rebecca Schultz's footsteps?
Well, that's the thing. We didn't expect this to happen. And of course, right now, people will be digging into it, figuring out are there other people. If people start to drop, if other ministers start to quit, then all of a sudden, yeah, this is a big issue. If it's just a one-off, then no, this can pass. And we can, speculate all we want what it means. And Karen makes a good point. This could be a very personal decision, and that's why she's not talking about it. It might not be political. It might just be certainly a personal issue that's popped up. But yeah, so unless we see more people dropping out, you think back to Alison Redford. A lot of people were starting to quit cabinet. They were unhappy with her. So I think we're not seeing that happen with Smith. And I don't think we'll be seeing that happen with Smith. But hey, let's see what happens in 2026.
Karen, how do you see the Premier responding to this? And from your perspective, is it possible others may follow in the footsteps of Rebecca Schultz?
I mean, she followed a pretty standard process. She appointed someone else to cabinet. Grant Hunter, interestingly, has been an associate minister or a junior minister for quite a while. I think he was in the whip position prior to this. So a longtime bridesmaid finally moved up to become a bride. So that's interesting. The cabinet is still very, very large, the largest in history. In terms of other ministers, I mean, it's a really tight cabinet. There aren't a lot of leaks. We haven't really seen any dissatisfaction since Peter Guthrie left. So I don't have any insight into that. I'm really unsure. Like Graham said, it's a new year. It will be interesting to see what develops. But as far as is someone on the precipice, it's really unclear.
Well, and Graham, maybe as a closing thought, reflecting back on your perspective there on the prospect of an early election, timing around that May deadline that Rebecca Schultz has placed on leaving the caucus, does that say anything about the potential for timing of an election?
Well, if you believe an early election is coming, you could say, yes, this fits into the idea that maybe Schultz knows something's up and might not survive another election, and that's why she's leaving. But the thing is, an early election, I don't think it's going to happen. Others are saying, yeah, it definitely will happen. Smith keeps saying, no, it's not going to happen. I asked about this months ago, and she said, I'm sticking with that 2027, the fall of 2027. And then more recently, she said, I'm sticking with that timeline, the fall of 2027. So that also, I would say, there's too many things happening right now. Like you've got that petition, for a separatist petition coming up. They're going to do that in the next, 3 or 4 months. Smith does not want an election with that playing in the background. She does not want separation to become a ballot box issue. So for that reason alone, I would say there's no election coming anytime soon. But, right now, dearth of information, and we'll start reading a lot of speculation into what could be relatively minor things, hoping to build a narrative as to figuring out what's actually happening in Alberta politics.
All right. We'll leave it there for time. Great to see you both. Thank you kindly for this.
It's been my pleasure.
Have a good night.
We know that one of the greatest demands in terms of physicians is in rural and regional areas, and we also know that physicians are most likely to practice in the places that they've last are trained or have been trained in.
The Dean of the University of Alberta's Faculty of Medicine on the opening of a new regional campus at Grande Prairie's Northwestern Polytechnic for the local training of future physicians, an expansion allowing the U of A to accept 30 more medical students a year. And joining us now to discuss that and more is the Mayor of Grande Prairie, Jackie Clayton. Mayor Clayton, good to see you. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. Great to see you.
All right, well, let's start on the launch right there of the Northern Alberta Medical Program. Future doctors studying in Grande Prairie. To what degree do you see this strengthening your city and the Peace Country region for that matter?
Well, healthcare has been a priority of our community and our region for a long time, like many areas of Alberta and across Canada. We're very fortunate for the launch of the Northern Alberta Medical Program, training 30 physicians in rural surroundings. Each year, another 30 will come through. It's a great initiative. So really increasing that opportunity for physicians to be trained where they potentially work. And we know through many years that when you learn somewhere, you typically stay there. These individual students, I've had a pleasure of meeting them all. They are very engaged. They're involved in the community. They're happy to be in a rural area, and it's really going to be a key to success. Northern Alberta launched first, and Southern Alberta, in partnership with U of C, will launch this year, I understand. So it's a great addition to Alberta's need for doctors.
Now, in terms of access to healthcare, where do things stand currently in efforts to draw more doctors to Grande Prairie?
We spent a lot of time working on attracting and retaining physicians, worked in hand with HS of the attraction and retention of specialists in particular. With the regional hospital being such an asset to this community, we wanted to make sure that we had the proper people in place. And so with that, we attracted almost 24 to 30 new specialists in the last year. And really, once they get here, it's about making sure they're engaged, getting their families involved in the community. We started an ambassador program where we do appreciation events, but also we fast track their partners or their family into the community, finding out early on what their needs are, whether it's through recreation or culture, making sure that they are engaged and understanding the needs of living in a northern community. And so that ambassador program and the work that we've done as a council has been key to not only attracting but retaining healthcare professionals in the last few years.
All right. Speaking of council approving the 2026 budget in late November contains a 4.3% tax increase. What does that outcome say about the financial challenges facing your municipality?
Well, as you're aware, every single thing costs more every single day. And so it's no different for municipalities. Our utilities cost more, the gas to put in the snow plows costs more, and everything costs more, from buying a fire truck to buying a pickup truck. With that, costs have gone up. We've done a great job over the past 10 years of keeping a below rate of inflation increase. So on average, over the past 10 years, our increases have been well below the rate of inflation. This one includes some 1.9% of fast tracking our Grande Prairie Police Service. So the services per se, outside of public safety, are below the rate of inflation. But with that opportunity in front of us to be able to fast track our police force, there was some upfront costs that required a bit of a tax increase. Those will stabilize over the next few years, but it was a decision that council didn't take lightly, as increasing taxes is not something anybody likes to do, but the compounding of the increase of cost to operate a municipality and then fast tracking the opportunity with the Grande Prairie Police Service put us at where we were at the tax increase.
On that point of the ongoing transition from the RCMP to the new police service, how close are you to this becoming the police service of jurisdiction?
Well, as of today, we have approximately 55 sworn-in members. Right now, there is another class of recruits being trained that will be finish their training in March. The police of jurisdiction date for us, for the Grande Prairie Police Service to be the police of jurisdiction, is October 22nd of this year, just over a year ahead of schedule. And so we're slowly increasing that force, and we will be ready to be the police of jurisdiction in October this year.
You've been able to ramp that up. So how much of a roadmap do you see this now being for the Alberta government's goal of a provincial police service?
I think that there's a combination between municipal police services, what the province is looking to do with the sheriffs and the provincial police service, as well as the RCMP, to serve the complement and the needs of all communities of all sizes. In our situation, as we've talked about before, it was about having that mid-sized city police service, having local oversight and local input. And now, having gone through it, we know that it's not without some heavy work and heavy lifting that needs to be done. However, to be ahead of schedule, to see the significant numbers of recruitment that were in front of us, every time there was a recruit class put out, there was hundreds of applicants for 15 people that were being trained at each sort of grouping. And so I think we've seen some great successes, but really what will come forward to know if this was the best decision is once we are the police of jurisdiction, once the community understands that the police service is accessible for conversations to talk about local solutions and local problems. We are still working hand in hand with the RCMP for this transition. It's going as smooth as it can, and I'm very thankful for the work that the RCMP is doing in this transition, and we're really just looking forward to police of jurisdiction in October.
All right, the October municipal election, of course, from 2025 saw a new council voted in, including your return to the mayor's chair for another 4-year term, and congratulations on that. But if there was a dominant theme or a dialogue that emerged from that election that will drive your council forward, what do you expect that to be in 2026?
I think it's a great question, and I don't think it's uncommon in municipalities. There appears to be a lack of information and finding that sweet spot where residents can get the correct information. As you know, social media can build their own stories, and getting the correct information in front of people when people are so busy on a daily basis, from their jobs to their family to their hobbies, it's really hard to get the correct information in front of people. And so there's a lot of conversations that I found during the election that need to happen, and it's really just correcting what people think is happening within a municipality and really providing that right information. So finding ways to get information to people is a constant struggle. The other piece is working hand in hand with the other levels of government, and that becomes more important every single day. So establishing strong relationships, collaborating with your municipal partners, and really finding better ways not only to increase your revenue, but to keep systems running efficiently and effectively for a cost that's affordable to all.
All right. We'll have to leave it there. As always, appreciate your time, Mayor Clayton. Thank you kindly.
Thanks so much. Appreciate the time.
That's the Mayor of Grande Prairie, Jackie Clayton. Now, here are a few responses to a recent story posted by CTV News, and it's about the potential impacts of the Trump administration's actions in Venezuela on Alberta's oil market. Cartoon says, I would be shocked if any oil company jumps at the opportunity just because of the cost and long-term political instability. Do not get too worked up. Ken writes, it would take at least $100 billion and around 10 years to restore Venezuela's oil industry to its former state. Why would anyone bother when the oil from Alberta is nearly identical? Why reduce oil profits by investing in Venezuela? Cassandra thinks yet another reason for pipelines east to west. Disc says Trump will use Venezuela as a purse for their oil, so Canada should seriously start negotiations with Asia yesterday. And Terry writes, bigger question, what is the potential impact on world order when one country kidnaps the political leader of another country? Have your say. Email us anytime at comments@albertaprimetime.com. Coming up tomorrow, with work continuing around the clock to repair Calgary's latest feeder main rupture, we'll hear from the mayor on realities of the situation and the path to a permanent solution. That's on Wednesday. Until then, have a great evening, everyone, from all of us at Alberta Primetime. Thank you for watching, and join us again next time.